There's a lot of things I'm looking forward to heading into week one. I wanted to make a video, though, talking about Brian Burns and breaking down what he could potentially do against these Raiders tackles. I actually think that there's a lot of intrigue when it comes to the young defensive players on the Panthers going up against this pretty good offensive line, and pretty good's kind of selling it short, very good offensive line. But I wanted to talk about Burns in particular, largely because we have a season of his work. But I find him to be a very interesting guy, and this should be very fun to watch. First, let's just talk about what Burns does well, and then we'll talk about how it could impact Colton Miller and Trent Brown, who are the two Raiders tackles. So, let's start off with this one. He's going up one-on-one against the Jacksonville left tackle, 74 right there. And what he's going to do here is it's going to be kind of a combination of a speed move and a rip move, where he's going to fake as though he's going to the inside. He's then going to break to the outside, and his whole goal is to get his left arm underneath 74's his own left arm. So, the outside arm. Burns wants to get his left arm to the outside arm and underneath it. And watch how he has the footwork to get 74 into position to where now you notice that he's trying to get underneath the left arm, but he kind of has it a bit on the hand, essentially, which is not bad at all. This is totally good. It's not exactly what he was going for, but he's totally fine with this because now he can just run around to the edge. The one downside is that 74 can try to push him behind Minshew. He's going to kind of do it. There's some contact. That was actually ruled roughing the passer, which is just insane. That's kind of what he can do. He can generate pressure through that, even though that one didn't actually result in a sack. There was some pressure there. A lot of what he does is with his footwork and it's with his speed. He's an incredibly quick guy, and this will be an even better example where he's going up one-on-one against a New Orleans Saints left tackle. This is not going to be Ramczyk or Armstead, so not as big of a deal as going up against one of those two guys. But what he's going to do is he's going to try and use speed right here, which, a speed rush is essentially just what you would expect. You run around the edge, you try to get by the tackle. The problem with a speed rush potentially is that it actually, the fact that you're running around takes longer to get to the quarterback. But the flip side is that if you have the speed, you can get there quick enough to still create some pressure. And so watch how this works. So he gets to the outside. You see 60 gets both his hands sort of on Burns' his own left side of his body, which is what you want here. The goal right here for a tackle is to just push Burns behind Breeze, and then potentially you've given up containment, and Breeze can even run to the outside if he wants to. At the very least, Breeze can just step up in the pocket a little bit and make a throw. So you have that going for you. But the thing about Burns is that he's just quick. And watch how, even though 60 does push him back behind Breeze, he's still really in that area. He doesn't get pushed back far enough, which results in him getting the sack. He's very good at those speed moves, and he has great footwork and great speed, and that's how he beats guys. And unlike a lot of these other young edge rushers and young, defensive ends, who I feel like they sometimes will get a bit too, they give up containment too easily. Burns really isn't that guy. In fact, he's had a few sacks just from a quarterback thinking that Burns has given up containment, trying to get to the outside, but then Burns is able to make the play. This one is one of them, where he's going up one-on-one against Donovan Smith, and it's not going to be a speed rush on this one or really a footwork play whatsoever. This is going to be a stab and grab, which basically means that Burns gets his left arm, stabs Donovan Smith, who's 76, who's going up against, but then he's going to try to get his right hand and grab Smith's left hand. So with that, that's what his goal is going to do. And watch how he gets the stab part, but Smith is able to swipe his left hand away. Good play by Smith there. And now Burns isn't really able to do much. He's kind of getting closer to the outside. And Winston notices this. Winston, he's a decent scrambling quarterback. Nothing outstanding, but pretty good. So he's going to try and see if he can pick up some yards here. He sees that it looks like containment has been lost, but it actually hasn't. Winston tries to run through there, but Burns is able to very quickly get a hand on him and make that sack. It might not seem like a big deal, but it's actually a huge deal that Burns can do this. And the reason why it's a huge deal is because the fact that he's so good at getting back into the gap when it appears as though containment has been lost, it almost allows him to do speed rushes for free. It allows him to give up containment for free because quarterbacks are still going to be wary of trying to take advantage of a potentially large gap because he can move so quickly and get back into that play. It essentially gives him free reign to get as far to the outside as possible within reason, of course. Now, will this work against the Raiders? Well, it's tough to say, but let's just get into sort of some of the better examples I can think of and some things that are worth noting about how the Raiders play. For one thing, Carr gets rid of the ball very quickly. So, I mean, that's definitely a factor here, is that Carr is going to get rid of the ball in an instant. And so even if you do a good job of, making a play on a Raiders tackle, sometimes Carr is able to just get rid of the ball immediately. One of the better comparisons I could think of as an edge rusher who is like Brian Burns, who played against the Raiders last year, was Yannick Ngakoue. And you could also throw Josh Allen in there as well. They both kind of, all three of those guys have somewhat of a similar style. I would say that both Allen and Ngakoue are the better players. Ngakoue is certainly the strongest of the three, so it's certainly not a one-for-one comparison by any means. But I think that in terms of play style, it is very similar. And so breaking down how the Raiders played against those two guys, I think is worth noting. Now, it's also worth noting, in that game, Brown was not healthy, but Kolton Miller was, and Kolton Miller might have had his worst game of the season. Even though he had a much better season 2 compared to his season 1, he definitely looked rough a bit he got beat a bit out at times. This was one of the examples. It's Yannick Ngakoue going up on him one-on-one. Ngakoue is going to try a bit of a jump move. That's what his plan is going to be, so he's going to try and get to the outside. So first he starts as though he's running straight at Miller. And if you look at Miller, this just isn't great form. It really isn't. Because for someone like Ngakoue who loves to get to the outside, you do want to make sure that you don't stay too far to the inside. You kind of have to trust to some degree that you can get beat to the inside and still come back, whereas to the outside, it's going to be a lot more difficult. And it's even more true with Burns, because, Burns, you're definitely okay with him going to the inside. You don't want him to get to the outside. But because of this, all Ngakoue has to do is sort of just swipe that left arm away, which is going to be very easy since Miller just has it out there. And he's just able to jump to the outside, gets by, and makes a quick sack. The reality is Miller is someone who can get beat by speed. He just is. He's gotten beat by speed in the past. Not as much his second year as opposed to his first year, but it still is a problem. And if I'm Carolina, I am putting Burns on Miller constantly throughout this season because I just think that he can definitely apply some pressure that way. The other reason I'm doing that is because you're probably not going to get pressure that way through Trent Brown. He's just really good at stopping speed rushes, like on this one. It's going to be Von Miller that Trent Brown is going up against. So, solid player, definitely pretty good. And he is going to try to get to the outside. But what you're going to notice really is that this is going to be kind of a stab and grab move as well. But you're going to see how while he tries to get to the outside, that right arm just sort of bounces off Brown, and Brown has the wingspan where he's able to get hand placement really where he wants. Now, a lot of tackles could still lose in this situation. Brown's right hand is not as far over to the outside of Miller as you maybe would like, so that could be kind of a concern for the Raiders. But the problem is that Brown's just so strong. He doesn't need exactly perfect hand placement. Good enough hand placement for Brown is all he needs. He easily from this point takes Miller out of the play, and again, that's Von Miller. And I like Brian Burns a lot. Von Miller, he is not, and Brown can easily handle Miller. He'll easily be able to handle Burns, I think. And so for me, I'm putting Burns against Kolton Miller, who does have a tendency to get beat by speed rushes, and I could see Burns getting to Derek Carr a couple times in this game, and that's something I'm going to be looking out for. I still have the Raiders winning this game. I still think that the Panthers are kind of a rebuilding team, and I do think that, even probably their biggest attribute on defense, being Carolina's defensive line, is still going to get matched up pretty well against a really good offensive line. So you might even still say that this is you give the edge overall to Las Vegas. But I do think that Burns could probably have a decent game in this one. That's my prediction. I'm going to say Brian Burns gets a sack and gets a couple of pressures, but at the end of the day, I think that the Raiders pull it out. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.